I've had a makeshift and barely functional setup to send bulk emails for way too long now, and today that changes. I have this simple script that I run on my local machine where I can paste in data for who I want to send to. It then splits that data into name and email and then loops through it to call the send email function. I'm using NodeMailer and logging into a personal Gmail ID with the deprecated Google app passwords. Obviously, that's not sustainable. So I wanted to move to a little more robust solution and I thought I'd take you guys along on the ride. First of all, let's go from this to this. Awesome. So now that we have some designs to work with, let's get to actually building this stuff. I'm going to be using React Email, which is a modern tool built by the people at Resend that gives you components that you can write in regular React, but it spits out the convoluted mess of code that you need to write an HTML email. But instead of using the automatic setup where they give you the preview and everything, I'm going to go for the manual setup and put it inside a Next.js app. So I can use the Next.js app to host the form that I can use to send those emails. Pull up the terminal of your choice and cd into your projects directory, and let's create a Next.js app. If you want to use npm, go ahead. I'm just going to be using pnpm because it's my personal preference. Let's name this. And I'm going to go with all these defaults. If you want, you can pause the video and check out what I use. Now that we have the dependencies, let's cd into the directory that we just made. I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code. So if you're also using that, you can type in this command to get it open. Quick side note, I do have a blog on how I set up my Next.js projects from scratch. So we'll be following this guide. If you want these commands, then you can check out the link in the description. Now we can finally get into the email part of it. Since we're integrating into an existing Next.js project, I'm going to go with their manual setup as opposed to their automatic one. So we're going to start with installing React Email and React Email components and adding this dev script to our package.json. So first of all, we need to resolve this. We cannot have two scripts that are of the same thing. So let's make this email. And since the default email dev script expects that our root directory has an emails directory, instead we're going to pass in the directory flag and say that we're going to have our emails inside the source emails. Let's quickly create this directory that it expects inside the source. We're going to create an emails and just start with announcing.tsx. Type in RFC to scaffold out a React component. If you don't have these shortcuts, you can go to your extension in VS Code and you can get one of these extensions that help you scaffold these projects out quickly. Now if we run the email dev script and if you open localhost 3000, we should be able to preview this component right here. It's a new day. It's a new camera angle because to be honest, I got massively carried away once I set up React Email, and for the most part, the project is complete, but I thought I'd still go over it and walk you through what I've done so far. Let's start with the basic structure of the email. So we start with the HTML component provided by React Email, followed by a head. And then before the body, I'm wrapping the body inside React Email's Tailwind component so that we have access to Tailwind classes inside the body. But as you can see, I created my custom head and custom Tailwind components. So let's look into what those are. Inside the head, I want to load my fonts in as well as put in the subject as the title of the email. So instead of creating this configuration on every single email that I create, I'd rather do this once and pull in this custom head inside every email. Quick side note about the fonts. This is the right configuration and the fonts should be loading. However, as you can see in my console, unfortunately, I'm getting some CORS errors because these fonts are currently loaded on another Next.js project that is hosting the website. That's something I still haven't learned how to figure out. I did try using the CORS headers inside the Next.js config, but unfortunately that hasn't seemed to work. So that's something that's still a work in progress. However, here, as you can see, since I do have the fonts installed on my computer, they are working, which means this configuration has worked. It's just that I'm not able to load the fonts from the website. Moving to the custom Tailwind setup, inside the Tailwind component, we can pass in a config property that allows us to write our entire Tailwind configuration. Unlike a regular project where the Tailwind config lies in the root of the project and gets pulled in automatically by the bundler, here we have to pass it explicitly into the Tailwind component. Instead of creating this configuration inside every email file that I create, instead I went ahead and made a custom Tailwind component that I can wrap every email in. For the design part of the emails, I first started by defining the props that I would require. So just taking in all the information that I need to display. The subject and preview don't show in this view since they are more metadata. So I don't set a default here. Whereas for the title, the dates and everything else, I do set a default just to check that everything is showing up correctly. Then I went into actually designing things. First, I just designed everything in a single file. And then when I created the next email, I moved a couple of the recurring patterns like the banner and the hero and things like that into their own components. So here I'm starting with the header, which is just the logo. First, I tried to position the logo using Flex, like a modern web development child. But then I realized that actually emails don't support Flex, and they only support tables, rows, and columns. So unfortunately, I wouldn't have been able to get this particular layout just using rows and columns, because the picture and the text both need to be centered in the entire thing. Currently, the header just exports a single image that's centered. Then the banner is just a different background and a little bit of text to signify the purpose of this email. And then we go into the hero. The hero initially had an image. If you remember the design, then the hero was left aligned text and a right aligned image. Unfortunately, it seems that if you have too many images in your email, then there are larger chances of your email ending up in the promotions tab of Gmail rather than the primary inbox. So I took the decision to remove the email and just go with a centered hero layout. So the hero component just contains a heading and a subheading and an optional subtitle that I only use in this email, whereas in the rest of the emails, there is no announcing section. So it's just conditional that checks if there's a subtitle, it renders it. If there's no subtitle, it doesn't render anything. I also passed in some children to this hero component so that in the off chance that I need to put something else into the hero section, I could pass in this register now button right into the hero and it would slot it in after the title and subtitle. Moving to the next section, we have two rows. The first row has a column for the masterclass dates that's aligned to the center. And the second row has two columns aligned to the left and right with the intermediate timings and the advanced timings. The next section is just a simple text that displays the description. And the last section is again just a little bit of text and a link to actually learn more. Finally, we have the footer that just displays the little salutation, a small note that in case you found this in your promotions, then consider putting us into your primary inbox so that you can stay updated. And finally, a little section that says if you would like to unsubscribe, then kindly revert back to us. If my data solution was a little more fleshed out, then I could have had a link that automatically goes and unsubscribes you. But unfortunately, the mailing list is still managed manually, so that's something that we can aspire towards. If you are paying attention, you would see these M0 classes that I've applied to all the sections and most of the text elements. And this is another caveat with using React Email and Tailwind. The Tailwind's reset is geared towards the web defaults. So in the regular browser, the styles that apply to headings and paragraphs and lists, that's what Tailwind is focused on stripping out for you so that you can put in your own styles. Unfortunately, the email clients have their own defaults that Tailwind is not geared towards solving for. So unfortunately, I found a little bit of inconsistency in the spacing. Then I realized that there was a margin being applied everywhere. So the M0 everywhere is just to remove the default styling that the email clients place on sections, text elements, and all that. That's the announcing email done. Let's go into the next couple of emails where things get a little more exciting. The payment details email is by far the most complex logic that I've written inside the email. So if you look at the prop structure right now, the subject and the preview remain common for all emails. The title and dates also are coming in here. But here's where it gets interesting. If you're a new student, then this banner changes to welcome you and congratulate you rather than to just thank you for your interest. The batch is what determines what these timings should be, so that's how that changes. And finally, we have the student type because we have different payment methods that are more common towards local students and students that may not be from here. So I'm pulling in the same custom head, tailwind, and preview containers along with the banner. But inside the banner, I'm doing a quick conditional for new student and displaying two different messages. I'm using the same hero, but after the hero, I'm using this date time component, which is similar to the announcement emails masterclass date section, but this is specifically with a left date and right timing section. Moving on, I fetch the fees converted to currencies dynamically from a configuration object that I'm pulling in here from the config. And finally, we have the payment method component. The payment method component has a switch statement for local and global cases. So in the local section, we are displaying one payment method, whereas for the global section, we're displaying a completely different payment method along with a button that takes you straight to the link. The rest of the emails are primarily just the hero, the date time section, and a couple of paragraphs. I've kept it simple. I've reused most of the components that I created so that we don't end up with too much inconsistency in the design and too much fatigue when you look at two different emails and the fonts are different, the sizes are different, and this just makes it simple to pass the information when you read an email like this. At this point, I'm really happy with what I've got so far. Unfortunately, I did have to deviate slightly from the designs that I had made initially, but they still look great, and as long as I can increase the chance that the emails are delivered into the primary inbox, that's all that matters. In the next video, we're going to use the Next.js project that we created, add in ShadCN UI, and use that to create a form that we can then use to send emails using Next.js server actions. If you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe so that you'll be notified when I upload that video. If you found any value in this, let me know. If you have any suggestions or questions, drop it in the comments below and I'll be sure to check them out. Thank you for watching and see you next time.